Next over. When you get a second. Okay, I will call to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Second mic, so.
Nice.
Oh.
Is that out?
No, I bet you it didn't get one back.
Okay. Are there any changes or additions or deletions to the agenda this evening? None. We have a couple of presentations, starting with a presentation from Historic Ithaca.
Which one did you say?
Yes,
Please,
yeah.
just so that it,
He said Ben the.
I have that. Give me 1 second to hear that.
So you're okay advancing the slides?
I am, yes.
Okay, so this we get to share, right? Yeah.
You're also welcome to hold it if you have.
Yeah, can folks see the screen? Maybe we should stand this way, so you can look at.
and that's mostly for the folks online.
Okay, great. So, good evening, everybody. So I'm Christine O'Malley. I'm Preservation Services Coordinator, Historic Ithaca, and this is Susan Holland, who's Executive Director. And thank you for having us tonight. So we're just going to do a quick Historic Preservation 101 at the invitation of you all, and happy to take questions, but we thought we just would run through a sort of basic presentation here. We also have significant elements, our reuse store, some of you might have been there, it's Center and Plain Street. And we also run our work preserve training program for youth and young adults with barriers to employment. And that's through the store. So next slide, please. So why does historic preservation matter? We'll just start with that. As many of you know, it's a way to remember and honor our past and our built heritage. It helps create a sense of place. It's also a very sustainable practice because we are talking about maintaining and reusing buildings. So you can think of yourself as being very green if you're supporting historic preservation. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little really quick overview, the early preservation movement in Ithaca really started in the 1960s. Historic Ithaca was founded in 1966, largely in response to urban renewal. A lot of destruction of buildings downtown to make way for new roads and highways and realignment, etc. And it coincides with a nationwide movement and interest in historic preservation. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea, when we talk about historic designation, what we mean really there are 3 levels. So there's the federal level, which is the National Register of Historic Places, which is often called the NR. There's the New York State level, which is the New York State Register of Historic Places. And then there's the local level. So for example, in Ithaca, where you have locally designated properties, and that's because there is an ordinance in the city of Ithaca that was created in the 1970s. And Ithaca is also what's called a recognized CLG, and that means a certified local government. So they have an ordinance along with a preservation or landmarks commission, who are local citizens with an interest in preservation, who advise and give out information and assist property owners there. So next slide, please. So I should say before we move on, this is something that's not often understood. If you could just go on, yeah, that's perfect, Ben. So a lot of properties can have all 3 designations, or they can just be on the National Register or just locally designated. The greatest level of oversight and protection actually in the way it's set up in the United States remains at the local level. So Ithaca, if you wanted to demolish something, you would have to go before the ILPC. So if it's locally listed, so that's, you know, some communities have no local ordinance like Trumansburg, but you have National Register listed properties in this community. And one's on the New York State Register. So some properties might have also what's called a D of E. It's a determination of eligibility for the National Register, but they might not officially be listed yet. So just to clarify that. Next slide, please. So do you want to talk about the National Preservation Act? Yeah.
So the National Preservation Act was started in 1966, ironically, same time as Historic Ithaca was started. And then the National Preservation Act of 1980 was the New York State Preservation Act. So in 1966, if you go to the next slide, that set up what they call the administrative arms of the National Park Service, which is sort of our federal agency that kind of overruns everything. You have your state historic preservation office. Every state has a state historic preservation office. In Tennessee, they call it the SHPO, and here they call it the SHPO. And they also set up the tribal historic preservation offices as well. And they really run things for the National Park Service. And then they also coordinate, the SHPO also coordinates what they call a Section 106. You might have seen that when there's some action being taken under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, under SEQR. You might see some action going on there. And then there's also a state rule of 1409, and both all of that, all of the land use and planning of the preservation world, I guess if you call it, falls under the environmental rules more often than not. So we tend to look at that a lot when we're working on our work involves a lot of that. So if you go to the next slide. So the National Register of Historic Places has some some clarifications and tightness, I guess you call it. I never can remember all of them off the top of my head, although I should. So it has to be equality of significance in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, and culture, and that's present in districts, sites, buildings, structures, and objects that possess some integrity of different items that you see there. So we refer to these lists a lot. We work with the State Historic Preservation Office if we're working on a project, and we look at these constantly. So you sort of, kind of like a testing of, you know, a property. How does it work? How does it fit? And we'll talk about a couple about in the village of Trumansburg that actually are on the National Register. Go to the next slide. And it has to be at least 50 years old. And then it has to possess, the integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and associations. And those are they can be gray. And so that's where we, you know, a historic group like ours comes in at the local level, but we work again a lot with the State Historic Preservation Office. And the conservation and the care of our cultural heritage is changing, not as fast as we'd like it, but it's changing at this time. So and lots more coming. So if you go to the next slide. So here are some examples in Trumansburg. The H Camp House is on the National Register. Your First Presbyterian Church right here on your main street right here. So those two were put on by probably the local owners or someone who was interested in putting those on. And next slide. Do you want to talk about the city of Ithaca?
So just to give you an example, in Ithaca, how the preservation program works is there is a local ordinance. And as I said, Ithaca is a certified local government program. So that means that it's recognized by the State Historic Preservation Office, and it follows the regulations set forth in that National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And so because Ithaca is a CLG, it's able to participate and administrate all these preservation activities and also receive funding. So that's the other benefit of being a CLG. Receive funding to promote preservation and be directed to preservation projects. So in the city of Ithaca, it's Chapter 73 and 228. So those are set forth the regulations in the preservation ordinance. Next slide. And one of the things that's really important to think about is that you can have individually landmarked buildings, locally listed buildings, and you can also have what are called historic districts. And you probably have heard those phrases before. So just to use Ithaca as an example, some of you might know the Lehigh Valley Railway Station. It was called the Station Restaurant. Now it's a bank. So that's an individually listed building. And then I put up the map on the left of Ithaca because what you're seeing are the boundaries of various historic districts: the DeWitt Park Historic District, the Henry St. John Historic District, the East Hill Historic District. So districts are a collection of buildings that cohere around a specific theme and fall within a period of significance, and they can be designated as a group, as a district. Next slide, please. So those are some differences. So then these are just some examples. You know, there are some individual landmarks. There's Cornell has its own art squad, which is a historic district. Next slide, please. And a lot of people say, like, okay, so what? What are the benefits of living in a historic district? So in Ithaca in particular, there is a local tax abatement program, which is often referred to as the Ithaca Law. So that's one benefit for being in the historic district if you do qualified and approve improvements to your property. You are also, if you're in a historic district or in an individually designated building, you can participate in a lot of tax credit programs. And that includes the federal historic tax credit program, but also the New York State historic homeowner tax credit and the commercial rehabilitation tax credit program. So a lot of you might know about Buffalo's sort of revitalization over the last decades. And a lot of programs in Buffalo, for example, have taken advantage of these tax credit programs. And so there is a definite economic benefit, you know, to property owners to participating in these tax credit programs. The next slide, please. So a lot of people get worried, like, okay, if I get listed or I'm in a historic district, it means I can't do a single thing to my house. No, like that's not really the aim of the program. And the way it works in Ithaca is that you have to get a certificate of appropriateness, but it really is managing exterior elements of your house. And it does not include things like paint. So you want to paint your house pink? Go ahead and paint your house pink. Other communities are very strict, but Ithaca is not so micromanaged in that way about paint color, et cetera. And to help property owners, next slide, please. The city gives guidance and about what's included. So usually it's things like the roof, mechanicals, hardscapes, windows, masonry, siding, these exterior elements. Next slide, please. And to make it more understandable for the contractors and the owners, they have developed the Historic District and Landmark Design Guidelines, which is available online and is referred to with visuals so that people understand, you know, what elements they're talking about and they can work with their contractors on these various elements. Next slide, please. So within the state of New York, there is this system called the Cultural Resource Information System, and it's a free online database where you can look up any property in New York State that happens to be on the National Register. And we use it all the time. So I just wanted to show you the interface here. You know, any citizen can create an account and proceed and research. And if you just go to the next slide, you'll see that actually in Trumansburg itself, there's been a lot of survey work over the decades in the village, certainly. So I pulled this map directly out of CRIS, the New York State system. So you'll notice that there are different colored squares here. So the yellow squares that are within these red bordered properties, those are ones that are on the National Register. The green properties, you can see all down Main Street, have been surveyed and they've been declared to have a determination of eligibility, meaning that they've been researched and surveyed and they could be nominated to the National Register. So that's a lot of properties, actually. A lot of really good work was done a few years ago on that. The black dots, it means it's undetermined. There might be a survey form. Somebody did research maybe in the 70s or 80s, not too complete, and it just hasn't been pursued and they don't know the status. And then the red dots are not eligible, so that a determination has already been made and they're not eligible. And I think what you're seeing in the bottom right, it looks like it's all the school complex there. Yeah.
I want to talk about one of the buildings in your town is actually on the state, just got nominated to the state register just recently, 24 Congress Street, Jeff Dombowski being the owner. And then that's going to then be, go forward for the National Register with, with SHPO. So they're pursuing that right now. So, and again, doing, work, I believe, I'm pretty sure Jeff wants to use the tax credits, but, I can't speak for him actually, but it gives it a reason. And then you can do, you can do a lot of things. And that's for homeowners. It's a 20% tax credits on the, eligible activities. And for federal, for commercial properties, income producing properties, which could also be a building that you are renting out, can be, it's, 20% federal tax credit, and they're all tax credits, they're not grants. And then 20% for a home, for the state tax credit. And New York State is the highest producer of historic tax credits in the country. So
Billions of dollars.
billions.
Every year. Yeah. And the next slide, please. So, within preservation, Susan and I, work in this heritage conservation field. It's not just about listing buildings, but we think about conserving buildings and building materials on a whole spectrum. And there are a lot of ways to think about preservation and ways that buildings can get reused. So the top left is the Cascadilla Boathouse. We were very involved in the city's rehabilitation project. It was done through a New York State grant. Great project. Middle, you might remember a few years ago on Coddington Road, there was this lovely little Greek revival house that was offered free to move, and somebody took them up on the offer and it was moved down Coddington Road. So buildings can get moved. Top right, in Ithaca, that's the Carey building, which got an overbuild. So the older building is below and addition was put on top. Bottom left, you might know the new Ironworks complex. So part of an older building warehouse was saved and a new apartment complex was added onto it. And then the bottom middle, where you see the radiators, we do a lot of what's called soft stripping or salvage. That's how a lot of things come into our store at historic significant elements. So taking up lumber, taking out old radiators, fixtures, doors, windows, etc., when a building is going to be demolished. So preservation is part of this way of thinking about circularity and the circular economy to extend the lifespan of the building, but also the materials. And then on the right, that photo in the bottom right is from College Ave. 2 years ago now, we were part of a deconstruction experiment project there as those houses were being taken down to make way for new apartments and other buildings. So when preservation is not possible, deconstruction and building material reuse is definitely better than demolition and more environmentally friendly. I think we just have one. Yeah, so this is sort of the pyramid showing that, the spectrum of reuse. And then the final slide here. So just remind you of our website, Significant Elements, our store. And I think we have one final slide with our contact information. And we'd be happy to, some resources here, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Comments or questions, starting with board members and then anyone in attendance?
I've got a couple I can start with. I got the sense that a lot of the kind of design requirements are in Ithaca at the local level through their local setup.
Yep.
Do you have a sense of what kind of requirements exist at the state and federal, right? So that you were talking about one of the houses just got listed. There's the tax credits, but what kind of other requirements come along with that?
So with the tax credit program, you're getting a tax credit for rehabilitation. So before you start any work, you submit, this is what we want to do, bring it to the state offices that look into that program, and everything that you propose has to fit in with what's called the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So you can't expect to get a tax credit for, say, you have a single-story house and we're going to add 5 stories up. Like it has to fit within the reason of that program. But they don't, squash any sort of like new technologies. Like say, I'm putting in a heat pump, I'm changing out my heating. They're like, okay, as long as the mechanicals are not in the primary view, it's so you work pretty closely, to get the approvals of the technical services people there.
Got it. And then my other question was with Ithaca, they're the CLS, was that the term? CLD. What aspects, if any, are you able to do without kind of going to that extent? So I'm wondering, like, if Trumansburg were interested in creating a district, do we have to have an ordinance and a board, or like, are they all kind of independent?
It's only if you want a local ordinance, like if you want to have local control and have a local preservation program, then you have to become a CLG, because you're following like a model law that's been set up by
Mhm.
other communities.
That has no police or oversight.
Yeah.
Well, and so, but is that required to create a district, or can a district be created separate from that?
So if you want a national registered district, are you talking about?
Oh, I guess maybe there's different types of districts.
Yeah, there's not 3 levels, you have local, state.
I see. So you can have buildings on any of those. You can also have districts at any of those.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I guess at the
You
state
can
or
have a
federal.
registered District and the village board would not have to be involved because it's up here at federal level.
And that,
I
and
see.
so just bigger citizens, you know, people who own those buildings, the ability to do, you know, use tax credit.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
And then by having that district, kind of back to that first question, if they wanted to make changes, they would then be working with either the federal, or the state level to work through
Yeah,
those
they want
changes.
tax credits.
Yeah.
CLG is just really, it's more of a technical services production from the state, really.
Mhm.
It gives you some good model ordinances, it gives you access to the, I mean, you can still do it anyway, but,
Some grants.
grant funding is pretty generous. We've used it over time, and I worked in all of it as well, so I've used it quite often.
Yeah.
And they'll, you know, if you want to do a survey, say, or finish up your national register, you could apply for that money as long as you're a CLG.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If there was an effort to designate or create a national or state level district. If I understood you correctly, that you said that would not be something that the village board would do. So does that mean that the individual property owners all would need to agree to apply for that designation in that
Yeah.
area?
Yeah, you would, so, for you all, like, you would have to find the person who's gonna write the nomination, because they have to be written as a whole nomination for the district. Like I said, when I showed you the map, you're lucky with Main Street, because a couple of years ago, they went through all those properties, and all those were determined eligible. So you kind of have that already going. But yeah, you would, the person, whoever you hired, whether it's a consultant or a local historian who did the nomination, would submit all that material, you know, just notify all the property owners, and if they all agree, you submitted. Those nominations for state and national register get reviewed twice a year, and usually you find out within a couple months. Yeah.
And if any one property owner did not agree, then would that then mean that the district could not be formed, or would they be exempted from it?
That's for the tricky part.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, usually it's a percentage and they, you know, what they look at the level of objection is.
And you also get access again to technical services. We have a representative, a local, you would have a county representative. I believe, I never know how they provide it, some of their work, but, and we're in constant contact with them, and they love preservation, they want to visit you, they want to, you know, do the work. So we just worked with the Francis Stewart Park, Wharton Studio Museum in the city of Ithaca to put Stewart Park on the National Register. So we had an amazing consultant. There's some grants too available to do some of that work as well from the Preservation League of New York State, which is kind of our, I guess, our not-for-profit that does state work. And they're also very helpful as well. So there's 2 people locally that are working on those projects now too. So that's a statewide not-for-profit that advocates for preservation, but they also have funding that comes through as well.
And if you're looking for a comparable community that has a national registered district, but is a village like you all, but doesn't have a preservation ordinance, I'd say Dryden is your easiest example, because Dryden has a national registered historic district, like right down there in the village, but they don't have a local ordinance, but they have, you know, this whole collection of properties that 40, maybe 30 or 40 properties that are part of a national registered district, and you know, wanted to talk to that, the village there, and see how people feel about that. That's a good local example.
Yeah, and we're someone who's actively working on using those tax credits for the sustainability initiatives on his house, and that's us, yeah.
And so it sounds like either the municipality or someone in the community can start that. It doesn't have to come from any one place.
And you know, a lot of like, quite frankly, a lot of the ones that were done locally in Ithaca and in communities like Dryden and in smaller places around, were the survey work of, a lot of the Cornell Historic Preservation classes over the decades. They would send the students out to do these surveys, and then they work with communities and say, like, what the district, so a lot of them have come from all different sources, but you know, some of them are individual property owners who really wanted it, but a lot of different directions.
And we partner with people too, we should say that. We actually do not have the resources in our office to do a survey ourselves, but we did help guide, or if there was an intern that was gonna be working with you, or we've done that work too, like we expanded the district police into the, with an excellent student, East Shore District. So we had her for a summer, and she came from the HDP program in Cornell, and it was actually fabulous. And then we kind of just took it through the steps ultimately.
Yeah, it was grant funded, you know, just to sort of clarify, we can't do it for free. We're not a profit, so we have to keep on supporting ourselves, but that particular expansion was grant funded, and we partnered with the city to get the expansion. So
Yeah. We're always available for technical services.
Yes.
We, and no one's.
A lot of citizens and community members who've just done their own nominations and sort of coached them along, and they succeeded. So there's a lot of ways of going about it.
Great. Any other questions? Any questions from anyone in attendance? Yeah.
You want me to use the?
Yeah, if you could.
If you could.
I'm wondering if you have any data about what tends to happen to property values that get designated as historic. I mean, I have no idea. They go up, they go down.
They do not go down normally. There's a study that was done with Fairfield Springs, a couple years ago.
One of the resources that we have on the thing is Place Economics, and they have all the studies of different properties, but generally it either keeps the value the same or goes up. So I haven't seen, Donovan Rikema is the expert on, they call it Place Economics, and it generally does not decrease. So,
I mean, relative to.
right. Right. Yes, there's not really a deterrent, if you will, even though sometimes people will say there is, but there is not. And, you know, and also people who live in those places or are going to buy them, always do your homework before. And we do work with the realtors a lot also. We do probably twice a year. You probably do once or twice a year. Christine and Brian McCracken, who's the preservation planner from the city of Ithaca, does a workshop for the realtors. So they are also aware, and they come in our office a lot to get the information about the historic properties as well.
Any other questions? Noah's on your board, so I'm assuming he doesn't have any questions. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Oh, I'm sorry, was there?
I just noticed that, move it from one of those zoning board queues.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Next presentation we have is from Camden Group. Gentlemen.
Good evening.
How are we doing?
Good. Hope everybody's doing well. My name is Peter Wernsdorfer. I am the operations manager at Camden Group. Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself?
Jeremy Jacob, I'm your chief operator for your wastewater treatment plant.
So we're here tonight because we have a funding request that we sent to trustee Dorfler, but really what we want to do is introduce ourselves and not be the people that are constantly asking for money, but also to come and explain to you why we've asked you for an additional $30,000 tonight. So we thought we'd better show up and have a conversation about it. If you had any questions.
Yeah, so my apologize. You did send these on Friday and I've been out of town, so I only,
Ben, I was very late as well, and it's been, thank God it's the end of this year. That's all I'll say.
so I just put them into the Dropbox for people to take a look. And I think probably the best way is just to go each one in a line. So the first one is the auto samplers. Maybe we'll just start there. And yeah, if you could just kind of briefly say a moment about
Yeah,
that.
let me take you through them. We have several items. Let's start with the auto samplers because that's a compliance issue. That is actually in the DEC report, and we were required to gather those. I did not realize that at the last funding request, so I left it out. So that was not in there. So that's in there tonight. So this is a total, the total cost for that is $5,381.05, and that includes all of the Camden administration and handling fees, us installing the unit, et cetera, et cetera. What, you know, how much is involved in that? That's a few hours of setup and calibration and.
It's basically
So-
something that we have, they're two separate pieces of equipment. One's for, the flow coming into the plant, one's for the flow leaving the plant. We'll set them up for a duration of 6 hours. They'll run automatically. They'll take a specified amount of sample. And so we don't have to collect it. It'll be there 4 o'clock in the morning and it's effective for doing some staff and DEC thinks it's gonna be.
DEC believes it will be more accurate.
Yeah.
It will be exactly the same because we sample based on the standard method protocol that the sampler is designed to do as well. But it does save us a little bit on that, and it does give them the assurance that when we pull the electronic record from the sampler, they'll be able to determine that we've done it on time.
Right.
Because right now what they're relying on is our chain of custody sheet that we fill out by hand when we do it. So we're in favor of them pushing us to this anyway, because we would prefer the automation. So that's the first item, and that is a compliance issue. The second one, and this one surprised Jeremy and me.
This one is the Jaeger quote in the Dropbox.
I'm sorry.
I'm just letting them know which one,
Oh, yeah.
the Jaeger quote or Jaeger, whatever you pronounce that.
I say Jaeger and they don't ever correct me, but
I would assume Jaeger, but
I mean, my last name is Wernsdorfer, right? You know, kind of comes with the territory. So that, Jeremy's going to walk you through that, but that's the rebuild kits for the return and the waste activated pumps. And there are two service, go ahead and explain that.
So there are 3 pumps in the basement of the facility. 2 of them are duty pumps and the third one is a backup. So if something happens to one of the other ones, and we're currently down to 2 working pumps and one of them's leaking oil. So if we lose those, the facility basically goes dead in the water. So it's super important that we get the parts, rebuild the pumps and get parts on the shelf to have in case there's more issues down the road.
And in this case with these pumps, it's strictly aging equipment. They're old,
So the
they've been
facility-
rebuilt a couple of times.
Yeah, and the facility was redone in 2015, 2016, and you're getting towards that 10-year mark.
So the total cost of that, where did that go? And this includes Camden doing the repair is $21,244.38. Then the only other item we have here is, and this was horrifying to us, was we discovered we had a panel go down and we started looking into the computer system because we're trying to load our operating, our asset management software. And the computer is running, everybody hold on to your seats, on Windows 7. And which is no longer supported by Microsoft. And we have, the first thing that Jeremy and I thought about when we saw that was we called our boss, Ken Sherrill, and talked to him about it because we have the potential for a security breach here. And then you'll have all kinds of other issues. So we have a standard kind of package that we install that's for $2,500, puts a desktop, 2 monitors, all the equipment that you would need. We'll hook it into the SCADA system. We'll be able to run the OpWorks program on it, and we'll be able to run your building security and everything else, camera system and everything from one unit. Right now, what we have is a defunct laptop that, well, even if it got legs and left, it probably wouldn't do any damage, except that security would be compromised. So we would like to get funding for all of those, and we understand if you need time to discuss it and we gotta wait till the next meeting, that's fine. But because we did have our nose was kind of late, but we wanted to bring that to your attention because it's actually a very serious issue that we've got to handle as soon as we can.
Yep, thank you. So maybe to take these one at a time, I think the auto sampler seems fairly straightforward. I mean, really both of them, the two equipment pieces are pretty straightforward. Certainly the pumps are pretty important to have in place. What I don't have a good grasp on at this moment is which lines we can take these out of. And if there is space there, if we need to look at a reserve. And so I apologize for not kind of asking some of these questions earlier. But I don't know, Jessica, if you have a sense of under the sewer budget, what lines these would come out of and what those look like.
I can, the best that I could comment on right now is thinking about where you're gonna move money from to be able to make a cash purchase.
Mhm.
So we do not have enough in the
Okay,
bank, so you would need to move some from reserves. So they're really looking at that, and so there's. Just so you can think about that while we answer the question, because I have to wrap my head around what kind of equipment you just discussed. If it's equipment and not a capital improvement, then it would be the equipment line, right?
I think it would be equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your reserves for a second, which is that they do not believe, so we'll double check all these things, right? My brain
Yeah.
is really good at knowing where to look, but it doesn't have all the information right there. Right at the end.
Absolutely with you.
I do not believe we spent anything from the sewer reserves this year.
Okay.
I need to double check that one of the 82,000 bond payments that we had to do. One was from sewer and one was from water, but I didn't verify that, so. Anyway, that's sort of more like cash flow and that's like reserves, so in the sewer capital improvement. We have three reserve lines, Mayor Hart, we have the capital improvement, the sewer rate stabilization and sewer collection system. So this, if it was equipment, would be the collection system.
Technically, the sewer reserve is not a capital improvement reserve.
Okay,
That's a general reserve.
so I'm looking at an old tracking sheet. I can tell you what the grand total is, right? Does that make more sense for this?
And what's in G230?
G230 is 158,320, which my sheet is labeled as capital improvement, which sounds like a misnomer. Okay, so I'll make a note of that. There is 311,000 and something in G232, which this is the sewer collection system. And then the sewer rate stabilization is different, so. There's, $400,000, almost $500,000. There's $450,000.
I've got to double check that collection system. I mean, we can take it from one
Okay,
or both. We can split it.
Is it-
Collection be throughout the village? Isn't that completely different?
I should look,
You would think.
I feel like I should look at
Plant is
the,
part of the collection system, right? Because it's collecting it, it's the process. Yeah, that's what I mean, that's the distinction. That's a Dwayne question.
a Dwayne question and an OST, which was code.
I wouldn't ask, I don't care what they say the code is. The question is to Dwayne. The difference between 230 and 232.
Yeah.
Have we designated as significant? I've got to double check that.
Okay.
So
I think anything new would come out of sewer reserve. I think the collection system repair reserve, if you fix anything that broke,
Okay,
so we could probably split it. Especially when we're talking about 20-year-old computers.
right, okay.
It's pretty bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
so. That's interesting.
And the
But we
pumps
can
would,
figure out how to split.
Yeah,
What we put.
how do we do for it all from,
Whichever one we end up using.
Sewer reserves.
So it's gonna have to be our January meeting.
okay,
It's gonna have to be for miss a referendum, which means we
Right.
can't pay for it till February.
right.
Assuming someone doesn't turn in a bunch of signatures.
Are there, so right, so if we have to wait till our January meeting and we have to wait 30 days to get the money out, does any of that scare you with some of these, or how's that feel?
The computer's already scary. The
Well,
rest
The computer.
Right, it's not gonna get any worse. I mean, I assume we have kind of time on the auto samplers, or we can,
Yeah, we can absolutely wait on the auto samplers.
the pumps.
The pumps are,
Scare me.
The
Yes.
pump's scary.
yes.
What was the price tag on
I'm sorry.
21.
that? On the pumps? Was
21,000.
20, yeah, that included us.
244.38.
Yeah. And that also, and that includes some labor, so the labor is probably just come out of our contractual. I think we would only have to worry about.
Yeah, we just threw that in there so you would have an idea, but we got two other estimates on getting the work done, and they were both about, well, one was about $600 more than we would charge you, and the other one was astronomical.
Right, so I think just
ignored it.
for our conversation, I think we'd only have to worry about the quote, which is just shy of 15. That's in the Dropbox.
I mean, if you wanted to, so in about 5 minutes, we were going to cancel our second meeting this month because it happens to fall on Christmas. If you wanted to, we could sneak in a second meeting next week-ish. For the purpose of
Just sorting this out.
getting a referendum out. So we'd be purchasing in
Second meeting in January.
third week of January instead of in February. So we can buy ourselves a couple weeks, but we don't have
Yeah.
a way to get the money out of reserves sooner than that anyway.
Yep.
But I could track and see if there was 21 to spend from the bank, from cash for equipment. So I could be really clear on that number, or no, by the next meeting. We can't do that right now. Responsibly.
I think by the next meeting, the question is which reserve does it come out of?
Okay, so we don't need to know if there's any fruit, any.
Wouldn't matter. You'd have to have a line for it.
What would
The
be
only thing
equipment
the only thing I can think of that would make sense would be contractual,
for the pumps?
but it should be a reserve line spend anyway.
Okay, all right. That's fair.
I'm happy to come back.
Yeah, I would, that pump scares me, so I
Yeah,
would
I'm good.
like to sort that out.
Calendars. How does everybody's next Tuesday, the 19th work?
Works for me.
Sure.
Yep.
Want to do 7 still or earlier, later? I think I'd prefer 7.
Okay.
I'm happy to. I'm hoping it's the only thing we have to do.
Was
So
this, right? Yeah.
we
Okay.
can do the 19th, that would be good.
Yeah.
You'll need to notice that tomorrow
Yes, sir.
and also notice the cancellation of the 25th, not that anybody would be here for that. 19th at 7.
7 PM.
All right, so then I want to be super crisp on our ask. So was I right in that? Am I right in assuming that we should be looking at the quote amount and not the labor inclusive amount? I don't know.
On the pumps, if you deduct 4,000 for the labor,
Yeah, right. I mean, we could see that.
the remainder would be with the management and handling fee and everything else. And so that would get you
I see.
installed.
Well, I'm just thinking that I'm assuming that actually, I have no clue how any of that works. My assumption was that like any labor costs of yours would come through just kind of a regular contract or something like that. But
We could do that, yeah.
Oh, it's part of the regular budget line, the regular
Right.
contractual budget.
So I mean, typically, I know in the past, we've typically just approved whatever equipment quote. We haven't worried about installation pieces, and that's just happened through, I think, our typical contract. But I don't
Well, so.
know if we have an opinion or you have an opinion of how to make that work.
Yeah, so this is puzzling sometimes to Jeremy and me. So there are times when so these issues with not the computer, but the pumps themselves would have our administrative and management fee attached to that, because that's outside the scope of the operations contract.
Got it.
And then the labor, though, I would think we could just do as labor. However you would work that, it doesn't need to be part of that. Of the final figure. If you needed a different fund.
I guess I think it probably depends on how we want to budget it, which is probably to take it out of reserves, because otherwise we didn't have it in the budget for it. So, okay, so then I take that back. So what we're gonna be looking for is this total request. I'll send you, oh, you were on this email, the request for fundings email.
Yeah,
And it has a total of 29,125.43 cents.
that's,
Three quotes in the Dropbox.
There are not 3 quotes. Could you send us those other quotes? I know you said you got some.
We have the one for installation we can
I'm
send.
sorry,
Okay.
not 3 quotes. But I see the auto samplers for 4,600.
Oh, and there's no quote, yeah, for the computer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so that's a standard Camden installation. It's $2,500. It's the desktop dual monitors.
Right, could you,
It's the same thing we install
And
everywhere.
that's how we get to that, what, 22 and change?
it's 29. So
Labor is
I
not
will,
the quotes, is the-
yeah, so the cost is, there's 25 for computer. 5,000, almost 400 for the auto samplers plus labor. And then 21 and change for the rebuild kits and actual rebuilding. I'll forward you this email that Peter sent me that's got more pieces in it.
This Jaeger quote only has, it's 14,900.
Right. I think what also would help is, well, maybe. I just sent you that one, that email. I wonder if the email is sufficient for, it might be nice to have the actual labor and everything. written out.
Broken down.
Yeah,
I can send that to you tomorrow.
yeah, along with the computer. And then, yeah, the pumps and the auto samplers, you know, the labor and the
Yep.
costs.
Yeah, I can forward that to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we're looking at just shy of 30,000 from
some
some
reserves.
reserves and looking for your help on that.
Sure, yeah.
All right, and we'll do that a week from Tuesday.
Yeah, so notice the meeting tomorrow and then you can figure out which line,
Consultant.
and we may split that up, split up the
Okay.
quote.
Okay. And I'll have one comprehensive quote document.
Tomorrow,
Dang, all right. Thank
not a
you.
problem. Then the only other thing I wanted to bring up tonight was, we are participating in NYSERDA's, strategic energy management program. So that's a NYSERDA funding. So that's, all the coaching and all the analysis and everything else that they do come from NYSERDA. So in full disclosure, for 5 years, I ran that program for NYSERDA. So I have a little bit of insight into what we want to do. But we will be coming to signatures this week. It will come in they'll request a digital signature from somebody, and Mayor, I believe it will be you.
Okay.
But if not, I think that either trustee Darver or the treasurer can sign it as well.
Okay.
But I'll make sure of that, and that will come to somebody in an email package probably by the end of the week.
Great.
Okay.
And then lastly, I have a fair amount of experience in this end of the business, and I'm watching, and I gotta tell you, I'd like to work with trustee Darfler a little bit and make sure that we're a little bit more aware of where your capital program is gonna go. And start working with you on that as well, because that's coming up. You have a new budget coming up in June, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll
So-
start thinking
It's
about that.
adopted me.
Yeah, so we probably ought to, we ought to be informing you better than we have been, and so we're looking forward to that. Get that done. And other news, the plant's running actually really well, and effluent numbers look great. We're in single digits. We had a little issue with the lab and phosphorus, but it turns out the phosphorus number is almost nothing too. So we're looking pretty good when it comes around to the new Speedies renewal. Our phosphorus issues we probably won't get hit with a TMDL. Good. So that's the good news.
Good.
That's the update. And look forward to us being here more frequently.
Great. Appreciate it.
Should we be here on the 19th?
No, I don't think so.
If you need us, then just give me a holler. I'll show up.
Yeah, we just need to figure out how to break that quote up between the two reserves and we should be good to go.
Great. Thank you. Nice
All right.
to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, both.
And you can-
Take care.
Good, you were good now, you are.
Good, but I appreciate it. I'll stay tuned. Thank you.
Appreciate your.
I'm watching, so you're.
No, just a moment. We're not quite there yet.
Okay.
About 2 more minutes. So our next item is our consent agenda. We have,
You're gonna want to be here.
it's riveting.
He's being.
We have our abstract and we have meeting minutes from both of our November meetings. The abstract includes a general fund abstract totaling, excuse me, $247,234.10. The EMS billing abstract totaling $20,957.31. Water fund abstract totaling $51,069.03. Sewer fund abstract totaling $30,185.07. And the trust and agency abstract totaling $30,546.38. And so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. So
Second.
any comments, questions? Or anything that needs to be pulled out of the consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now, public comment period number 1.
I'm here about water.
Okay.
Glad I got to see this thing. I've lived here 19 years and I live up in Trumansburg Estates, low income. And we're treated like that. But the people running the building is our problem, and I've dealt with a lot of discrimination and stuff, but that's not the problem. When they start cutting back on our water pressure, I have a problem. Our washing machines have always been 29 and 30 minutes. Now, like I said, I've been there 19 years. It was new when I moved in. They have cut our washing machines back to 27 and 23, depending on the cycle. And I've heard from my neighbors, because I haven't done my laundry yet because of that reason. One of them, the water didn't even touch a pair of jeans, and they had to rewash their clothes over again. I know my toilet's not flushing right. And I don't think they've lowered the times. I think they've lowered the water itself. There's one lady that has incontinence, and the girl that does her laundry says that she can't get the smell out now, of urine. Let's see what else. Just that, and we don't have a maintenance man now. And they're always complaining. Just recently, because like I said, I've lived there a long time. They've just recently started complaining about their water bill. I'm like, we pay our rent. I don't know why what your problem is, or what's going on, Providence Housing is the one that owns the building or runs the building. And in case you didn't know, they are owned by the Catholic Archdiocese of Rochester. The ones that are in court, which when I said something to HUD about it being a separation of church and state, they go, well, aren't you living cheap enough? Okay, I spent one day on the phone trying to get help for other stuff, and I ended up back at the same agency, and I could write a book on how many agencies do not work like they're supposed to. But basically, we don't have a maintenance man now, so I don't know if we're going to get a lot of snow, what's going to happen. There's people that need stuff fixed. The one girl, I just found out tonight, she doesn't have heat in her apartment, hasn't had it for 2 days. There's a little red box that needs to be changed every so often. And we know that's probably her problem, is that probably needs changing, but there's no maintenance man. I think that's about, I could go on for hours because I've lived there so long, but
basically, all the crap I've had to put up with, I don't mind, or I can deal with it. But when I cut down on my water, and I'm OCD as hell, I go in there and I wipe down all the wash machine and the counter and everything before I even bring my clothes in there. So, and I don't want my clothes half washed, especially since I got heavy clothes. And some of them are actually cost a little bit of money. I don't know if you've ever been here, but they got great donuts. And I don't know whether you could maybe talk to the management up there. Or, because our manager comes in tomorrow. Sometimes she takes off halfway in the day, but she's usually there Tuesdays and I think Wednesday or Thursday. And maybe you could just give them a call or something to help us out, because I couldn't even figure out why my toilet wasn't flushing right until somebody said something about the water being cut back in the washers. And then it was like, oh, that explains it. So we need help. We're
Do you know
being
the
treated
manager's
poorly
name?
and we need help.
Do you know the manager's name?
The manager's name is Karen, and I have no idea what her last name is.
That's good enough. Sorry.
Because we had a manager, but she kind of got let go after they went through her files. Like she harassed me for 7 years, and basically I complained so much and they went through her files. One day when I was going to ride my motorcycle, I came back in, there's a notice saying that she's gone. Never a reason why or anything, but I have a feeling it has to do with something shiesty.
So we can't promise anything.
Okay, and I don't know how it affects, like the water in the town, or if I've talked to everybody about that goes and does their laundry somewhere else, and they're all telling me it's 29 or 30 minutes. Because it's kind of a health thing if
I don't know.
if you don't get your stuff clean and you put your stuff in there. And
I don't know anything about how they would cut back on the time in a washing machine, and I don't know how they would cut back on water pressure, but we can certainly.
Yeah, it's like, because it's not filling up all the way, and I know it's something they've done, because like I said, my toilet's not flushing right. I literally have to, I flush it and the toilet paper, one piece won't go down, and I have to do it again. So I don't really know how they're saving on water. And I don't know why they're complaining about their water bill.
So again, I without more information and doing some investigating, I can't promise anything, but we can certainly start to.
That's what I want, investigating. Because I just know they're not doing something right.
Well, we will.
But I want to do my laundry tomorrow. I'm all out of towels, except for the ones my daughter gave me for Christmas.
We will see what we can find out.
All right, that would be great. That's all I'm asking. See, I didn't even ask for any money. Although I do want to go see the Stones. I asked for like
Thanks for helping with
Mhm.
election day. I think that's how you talk about election day.
Yes, I did. I helped on election day. And then Ann told me to come to the meeting.
Oh, good.
To talk to you guys, so. I talked to him and it's funny seeing the other right?
It's funny.
That's like every night except.
Did you leave contact information or would you on this?
Yeah. If you're coming back, yeah.
I can do that.
All right, we have a couple members of the public online. Any other comments?
I just want to put my phone number,
Okay.
Great, thank you.
and I live at Brookside Drive.
Okay.
Any other public comment?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to reports of representatives. We have Ann and Mary. Why don't we go with And from Tompkins County Curtis.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
I don't know if Carol's still there, but I wanted to thank Carol for following up. I ran into her at the Winterfest, and so I often, part of my job is not always figuring out how to solve everybody's problem, but pointing them in the right direction. So I want to just say kudos for Carol to follow up and talk with you guys so you can help her look into things. I just want to say also I've helped her look into some various things over the years, and she's not just looking after herself, as you heard, she's always looking after everybody else there. So if Carol's still there, Carol, thanks for doing that and looking after the other folks who are there often. You know, some of them are older and some of them have disabilities, so I appreciate her looking at that. So as far as the county stuff goes, I attended a cybersecurity full-day workshop, and I don't know if anybody from the village attended, but it was open to everybody in all municipalities in the county, and that was presented from Homeland Security. And one of the reasons I wanted to say that, because you talked mentioned about security issues, and we learned quite a lot. And if you guys ever have anything that the county can help you with, feel free to contact our IT department, because as you know, the sophistication and the frequency of breaches is getting pretty intense. We heard a story about Suffolk County, the whole county, the county government getting taken over, and they had to use paper for everything for several months. They couldn't use their computer or internet. So that kind of makes us want to do a lot more at the county. I attended also the TCOG meeting where you guys were talking about, and for folks, sorry, I hate to use acronyms, the Tompkins County Council of Government meetings. And because at the county, we're trying to figure out how to do the funding still for the rapid medical response vehicle and that staff person. And it was great to hear from the different municipalities, their input on that. And I wanted to say thanks to Mayor Hart regarding the information. I'm trying to remember the chart that you showed. What was that chart called?
It's a map of all of the 20, it's a map of all of the EMS calls in Tompkins County in 2022 with bangs removed from it. So you can see how often Trumansburg and Dryden are out of district. I did send that on to Dan Klein today, so I'll forward it to you as well, just so that you can have it reference. Ironically, I don't have our numbers, but I know after our meeting on Thursday, it was confirmed or double checked for me. Dryden Ambulance, it's 26% of their calls are out of their district. So most of those are going to be into the town and city of Ithaca. But I'll forward that map.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Ward. And just seeing that map along with all the other information that you've shown and other people have shared, and our emergency department has shared, emergency operations, I continue to be even more in line with thinking the county needs to pay for this. For folks out in the public, the county legislature is toying with the idea whether we're going to pay for this emergency response system to help augment the emergency response departments that are already there, or are we going to ask municipalities to within the county to chip in? And I don't see how we can. I still have no idea how we could slice and dice this to have municipalities kick in. I think it's going to affect, as you showed, it's going to affect everybody. There's going to be a ripple effect throughout the county. So I always think things should be fair as much as you can, but if we can't make them fair, the county has a way to, through our taxes to be able to have everybody chip in. I kind of look at it like our sheriff's department. There's various levels of for instance, in the village where some municipalities have a public safety department, some don't, but I don't see how we could slice and dice and charge Trumansburg one thing for our sheriff's department and Town of Ulysses and then Enfield something different. So again, I'm committed to making sure that this goes forward and also hoping that I can convince my colleagues at the county that we're just gonna put it with the county's budget. And I think it'll be much simpler too. And the last thing that I had was just encouraging everybody as we're heading into the holidays, as I said many, many times through COVID, is to get your COVID booster. There's another one out. If you haven't gotten it yet, there's a flu vaccine. There's a couple other things you can get vaccines for. And just be careful there. There's free COVID tests still online and at a lot of the drugstores. So please, test if you're going to be at a large gathering and wear a mask and be okay with other people if they want to wear a mask for any reason. And so that's it from the county. I wanted to say, as far as the village and the town goes, I'm sorry that the recreation land purchase didn't pass, and I hope there's some other way that you can address that there for the village and for the town. And lastly, just wanted to say happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, Ann. Appreciate it. And certainly appreciate your ongoing staunch support for all things emergency services. I think, as you know, we've talked about what to do about the EMS situation in the region for a long time. This actually has a chance to make a difference. We don't have to kick the can down the road and do another study in 6 years to learn what we already know. So hopefully this can move forward. Well, it will move forward next year, but hopefully it can be maintained. So any questions?
Right. Oh, and if I could add to, I attended Winterfest again, and what a great event you guys had. People from all over the place. I talked to a lot of different people, but a lot of people local too, and glad to see everybody out. And it's such a perfectly run and really fun event. So thank you to the organizers for that.
Great, thank you. Questions for Ann? All right, thanks so much, Ann.
Thank you.
Mary.
Yeah. Hi. As Ann noted, the big news at the town was the failure of the vote on the rec land purchase. But I did want to thank you for your support, for your board support. That was very appreciated. Right now, as far as I know, there are no other viable options and that I'm aware of. And so I'm not sure what the next steps will be. We may step back and let the issue calm down a little bit before we approach it again. It was pretty contentious. There was a lot of strong feelings on both sides. And that whole issue actually took up like a lot of time and money, scheduling the vote and getting legal opinions and responses to voters' concerns about, whether we could actually do this or not. And I'm glad it's over. Not happy with the vote, but it is what it is. Anyway, the other big issue coming down the pike is the Organic expansion plans, which I believe I've mentioned before. They were supposed to present to the town board at our last meeting, but they put it off until January. So we won't be seeing what their proposal for a development district will be until January. Along those same lines, we have a development district number 3, which is the property where Barangas was located. And there's a individual very interested in purchasing that property, building a building, a new building, tearing down the building that's there, and constructing a new one, and having a butcher shop, restaurant, and a store, you know, like a meat store, a barbecue restaurant. So we don't have a plan of construction from that. It was a little bit unclear from our zoning law what happens to a development district when it gets sold. So we're going to spend some time clearing up what exactly happens to the land. For instance, the development district states that the land is approved for a restaurant and a bar. It specifies a certain number of parking spots, and but it doesn't. There's a lot of things that it doesn't address that are usually addressed in zoning, like setbacks. So that's a developing project, I guess you'd say. So we're going to get more clarity and information on his actual project plan in deciding how to treat his proposal. We also received a complaint on the construction vehicle traffic on South Street. I'm not sure. Caitlin said she would look into it. The supervisor said she would look into it, but I'm not quite sure what the town can actually do about that. The people who were complaining live on the corner of South Street and Curry Road, and they said that the truck traffic is, you know, really loud, lots of trucks every day. That shakes the building, and you know, we actually have some construction traffic that I believe it's construction traffic. It's big trucks that come down South Street, and doesn't shake my house, but you know, I don't know. Anyway, Caitlin said she would address that, maybe with the police. And then, just as a point of information, the town received notification that an individual is planning to open a cannabis dispensary at 1708 Trumansburg Road, which is it's an existing small house, I'm told, on Teberg Road, right near Mama Said Hand Pies. And so it's just heads up that this is in the planning stages, and it's apparently because of the type of business, the local government needs to be notified. And I think that's about it for now.
Okay, any questions for Mary? Thanks, Mary, much appreciated.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Item number 7 is reports from this board, starting with myself. We already took care of the second meeting in December. I also have need of, if possible, moving our January the 8th meeting. If possible, would everybody be able to do Tuesday the 9th instead of Monday the 8th?
Mm-hmm.
That suits me fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Can do that.
Yeah, we'll move a ZBA meeting if they were to have any business before them, but there's nothing currently.
All right, so we'll just need to notice that if we could. Moving our first meeting in January. One night into the future, Tuesday. Okay, thank you, everybody. And then the last item I have is, excuse me, in the Dropbox, if you haven't reviewed it already. We have an engagement letter for legal services from Guy Crow of Thaler & Thaler for the calendar year 2024. Everything is mostly the same. I don't actually, looks like his fees are up a little bit. So I would entertain a motion to authorize my signing this engagement letter for 2024 legal representation with Guy Crow Esquire of Thaler & Thaler.
So moved.
Second,
Are there any questions, comments, conversation?
slowly starting to figure out how to work with them, so I'd rather not start over with a different lawyer.
If there are no other questions or comments, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hey. That's it for me for now, I think, maybe for the rest of the meeting, who knows? Fire and Trumansburg Chamber.
Yeah, kind of slow for December. They had 16 calls. We've got 259 calls year to date. The tables have been ordered that we agreed to pay half for, so I just told them that when they come in, just to invoice us for that half that we agreed to do. They say thank you very much. The new compressor is in service and they really needed it. So they wanted to thank the board for that approval to get it done right away. The letters to Santa Box is out now and it's there from December 1st to December 20th. So anybody that wants to put their letters to Santa for their children in there, they request that you make sure that you put the name, the age, your phone number, and your address on those letters so that they know how to fulfill those special requests. And we just want to say congratulations to Auden Gruber Hein, who won the Rotary Service Above Self Service Award. And he's one of our volunteer firefighters, a wonderful young man. And we just want to congratulate him. And other than that, the chamber is having their last event of the year, and it's going to be at Cedarwood on tomorrow night, starting at 5:30 for whoever wants to attend that has businesses or a not-for-profit, or that is going to be their holiday party. So other than that, nothing much else to report.
Okay. EMS Youth and Street Tree.
Go in reverse order. So for trees, I mentioned a couple months ago, possibility of a contract with CCE to run a citizen pruners like program for the village, as well as some level of skepticism about how much we would need that kind of program. Talked about it with the committee. They thought it would be worth doing a pilot year, so not any kind of long-term commitment, but just see how it goes, see what the commitment is from the community, test the waters essentially. So unless there's objections, we'll use part of our unused tree maintenance budget. So the community budget will go towards that instead. Although if there are objections, speak now, kind of a deal. For youth, things are moving along. Obviously, referendum was a hot topic in our last meeting. We are also now applying because Street Trees want a contract with CCE Youth. As you all know, we did not renew our contract with CCE at the last opportunity. So now the town is applying directly to the county for funds. So Caitlin is in the process of doing that. I hope to help her with it soon. The application is due fairly soon, but we're essentially revamping the way that we do positive youth development in the school district. So that's fairly exciting. I know recreation is all the rage right now, but to me, that's actually the more important sort of flip side of that coin. So I'm really excited that we're taking that on. It's kind of nerve-wracking, but you know, change is frightening, but also very, very exciting. I think we have a real opportunity to improve the way that we do that as a community. For EMS, I'll start with calls. Covert 14, Enfield 2, 9, Hector 9, Village of Interlaken 6, Town of Ithaca 4, Lodi 4, Ovid 1, Village of Trumansburg 18, and then Ulysses 25. We also had a request for our charity care policy, which is something that we have not had in my decade of time on this board. And I was going to bring it to the board, but then I realized we're actually in the middle of evaluating new service providers. So I will just say, I think for the moment, we'll stick with the way we handle the charity care policy for this case, but then moving forward, it's something I think maybe to keep in the back of your mind about how we handle that when we start to think about moving to a new company. And I guess, oh, the AV thing is lower down. So that's all I've got.
Okay. DPW, water sewer, CPDR, and farmers market.
Yes, so nothing to report on the farmers market side. On the CPZR side, just to say that we switched back to commercial zoning. After doing some looking at main streets in and around Trumansburg, Tompkins County and beyond, just visually kind of getting a sense of what those look like and thinking a bit more about our own main street. There's kind of an entertaining idea to expand the current mixed use a little further down Main Street, understanding that there's already an inn further down, there's the school, there's a lot of commercial rentals, there's a flower shop, there's a pottery shop. There's a sense that like Main Street is much more mixed use kind of throughout than is currently zoned, and maybe kind of recognizing that, but also recognizing that it's different than right downtown, but beyond that, it's kind of a little more mixed. So what could we think about as far as districts go that give a little more flexibility down different areas of Main Street? So more to discuss there, but that was kind of the outcome of our initial conversations to see where those might go, what impacts those might have. Can we come up with something that makes any sort of sense out of all that amalgamation of what's down there or not? So we'll see as we get into the details if it holds together, but that's kind of where the committee is interested in diving into next. On the DPW water sewer side, two small items. One is now that we have started moving forward with sewer, including a water rate piece of it. There was some concern from folks regarding filling pools, which is probably the largest single water use that doesn't then go into your sewer. And so I was interested in the idea of, we do have a pool filling process. The DPW can come and essentially give you a hose hooked up to the fire hydrant, and you can fill your own pool. Currently we charge slightly beyond the village rate for that, for water, but I was thinking of moving that down to the actual village rate for water as a kind of compromise there. So I don't know if we need a resolution around that, but just wanted to run that here and see if there's any concerns or objections. There would still be a small fee for the DPW to come in, set that up for you, tear it down and so forth. So it's not going to, you have to have a largish pool for that to break even. You know, there's a fixed fee and then a lower, water fee, but for larger pools or certainly in-ground pools, likely you'd end up doing all right. So I don't know if there's any concerns there, but that's
I
my
think
thought.
that's a great idea. That seems like a good way to.
But there would be a fee for them to come and. do
There'd be
it.
a fee for the DPW's time. They figure it costs about half an hour or something of their time to come, between coming, setting it up and then taking it down kind of a thing.
Mhm,
So there'd be that fee, but then the per gallon fee would be less.
the same.
It would
as
be,
your-
it would be the same as you're filling it up from the tap, right?
Okay,
But you would skip the sewer fee is the.
Oh, I see
that's
what
the
you're
trick.
saying.
That's the
Mhm.
difference there. Yep. Because it would be coming from the fire hydrant, not from
Right.
your tap, right?
Seems fair.
All right. I will throw it. Good call. I'll make those adjustments on the website. The other one was that there's a couple parts to this, but we've been looking at remote read water meters. I don't know where that's gone, and it may not really matter for this particular conversation, but that's happening. At the same time, we did then go out and buy a large number of water read meters for Compass that did not have that in mind. So that was an unfortunate kind of misalignment in timescales. However, fortunate accident, apparently those water meters do not work with our system, our read system at all. So we can't install them. However, there's a whole roller coaster here. The manufacturer or the supplier is willing to purchase them back from us because they have a different client who could use them. So we have an opportunity here to kind of sell back the things that we purchased that we can't use anyhow, that we probably should have thought more deeply about anyhow. And then kind of start fresh and maybe revisit the idea of figuring out our remote read strategy before we go in on quite a number of radio read meters. All that to say, I believe for us to do this, I'm assuming based on my experience with equipment, is we have to declare them no further use so that we can sell them back to the company. So I would make a motion to declare the water meters that we have slated for Compass to be declared no further use. And then we can sell those back.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Will you be negotiating the purchase back price?
We certainly can. I did ask Dusty for some sort of quote or something, but I haven't received that yet. But I think we can declare them no further use regardless, because we can't even put them in because they don't work with our system.
So a side note, and I'll keep my mouth still, is that we purchased them at pre-COVID prices and the market has changed. I don't know how much we will be out there negotiating, but.
I will connect
What
with
it's
Dusty
worth.
and see, maybe we turn a profit on these is what you're.
No, maybe they don't get all the profit because then they're certainly gonna be selling the post-COVID prices in the current market.
That's fair. I see. Yeah, if they're just gonna buy them
And we'll
back
be
at
buying
our
from
cost.
them to get what we need at post-COVID prices.
I like that thinking. I'll put a bug in Dusty's ear.
Any other comments or questions?
Just a note that I will be abstaining because while this doesn't really feel like a conflict of interest, it is directly related to my
Right.
job, so.
Okay. Hearing no other comments or questions, all in favor of declaring the brand new meters that we can't use of no further use, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed?
All right, two abstentions, two motions, two abstentions. Okay. That is all I have.
Once you have negotiated a price, then we'll have to approve the sale.
Yes, yeah. I did ask Dusty on time frame, and he's under the impression that there isn't a rapid pressure to have something to put in the ground right away. So I think we have a little wiggle room is what I'm led to believe.
For my end of things,
If you're willing to, I don't know.
there's no pressure.
Yeah,
And if they don't work anyway.
right. Well, I mean, we could try and move more quickly we have another meeting in a week, but I don't think that's a big issue. So we'll figure out a price. We'll have to approve that. And then I think the other part is understanding, I don't know where the thread of remote read has gone, if you have any update or anything.
Yeah, we have a quote so the meters that are in the rest of the village have a radio read head. It can be swapped out for a cellular read, transmission head. And the quote is for all of the existing meters, so it would not include Compass. And it's a little over 200,000. So once we get Compass done, then we'll have to get a new quote for those two, depending on whether the property owner wants each individual one remote read or just the main.
Okay.
And then we'll have to find grant money. It's a little bit too small, honestly. 250,000 is probably too little to go to EFC. Unfortunately.
Is there a version where we would want to buy the cellular read meters like straight for Compass? Like if we're gonna have to buy a bunch of new meters?
Possibly.
Okay. So all right, so maybe that I can push that back to Dusty. Is that
what a reimbursement profile might look like?
Yeah, for him to look at both radio and cellular read for those and decide if we want to start with radio read and then upgrade to cellular as part of the whole grant thing, because that could take a little while. Or if it's worth trying to like get whatever base station we need and then start there and have like a mixed thing for a bit. So I can ask him to come up with an opinion on that. Yeah.
Let's see what we can figure out. Okay. Police and ETC.
Let's talk numbers. Let's go to the call report. Not a ton to report, 112 calls for service for the month of November. They included 3 calls for service outside.
Sorry, but your mic is off. I don't know.
Mic is off.
Or battery. Wait. Oh, came back on. Sorry to interrupt.
Flash over here.
Flash.
Okay, for the folks at home, sorry, missed that riveting intro. Let's go to the numbers and start with the call report. 112 calls for service during the month of November for the Trumansburg Police Department. We responded to 3 calls of service outside the village in assisting with the Tompkins County Sheriff Department on a mental health assist and 2 welfare checks. Of the calls within the village limits of the criminal investigation variety, we had 1 domestic investigation, 5 harassments, 2 larceny thefts, and 1 motor vehicle crash investigation. No incidents to report coming out of Winterfest. Everyone seemed jolly and merry. There was no altercations of any kind, which was good. There was 1 illegal tabling, but that was brief. So no harm there really. And yeah, all indications are that everyone was well behaved and had a good time. Would like to recognize that this Friday will be the retirement of Sergeant Scott Peters, who has served his country and community proudly for 40 years between the Air Force, the Groton Police Department, the Ithaca Police Department, and 12 years in Trumansburg. And we will celebrate him on Friday. So thank you, Sergeant Peters, for all that you've done for country, county, and Trumansburg. We appreciate it. We will be hard to replace you, which we will try to do. Joe and I continue to talk through this idea I mentioned about, can we blend a part-timer and a sergeant position into one to help us full-timer, I'm sorry. That's the exact opposite of what I wanted to say. So that we can, one, fill a sergeant position, which isn't easy, and a full-time position, which is easy, and do it within a salary offering that actually can help us recruit somebody. So he's starting to look into the numbers, what that would look like, what kind of a shift that would look like, somebody on duty. So he feels pretty confident it can work, but we'll hopefully bring that type of proposal soon. Any questions on the police department?
No, I thought it was interesting to see that the city of Ithaca still has 0 applicants applying for positions in the city of Ithaca, regardless of the $20,000 increase in asking for their so I saw that meeting, and they said that they can't even get lateral transfers to come in and fill those positions. And when asked by the council why they think that is, and they said, well, because they hadn't had a police chief in a really long time, so lack of leadership, lack of support from the administration. And they said they're not getting any applications whatsoever for the city of Ithaca to bolster their police department. So I think we might be in a good position to get some candidates that, since we are supportive, and I think we offer a good salary for our officers. So hopefully that's encouraging.
Well, Chief has been doing a few interviews recently. I think there are a couple candidates for a part-time position and maybe a full-time position. But no one that we're ready to bring before the board yet. But yeah, we'll see. If you want to give us a try, let us know.
Yes.
If you're
want
hungry.
you.
That's right. That's right. ETC, again, Winterfest recap, thought it was great. The weather was not wonderful, but seemed like a good turnout anyway. People didn't complain. Hilby did his thing, didn't complain about the weather. He's an all-weather juggling boy, which is nice for this area this time of year. Do want to say thank you to the Cynthia Menino, who really does Winterfest. Carries a lot of the load on that, and we would not have Winterfest without her efforts. And also the rest of the ETC should be recognized. Jess Giles, Nana Potenza, and Jen Demarest do a lot of work with Cynthia as well. Why can't I say Cynthia today? My goodness. I'm sorry, Cynthia. I know you're watching. That doesn't look like you are. That's okay. You'll watch the recording. I know you're good for it. But I was in Garrett and Atlas that day, and both places were very full. So hopefully all of Main Street saw a nice uptick. Thank you to the DPW crew for getting our tree anchored. I think at one of our last meetings, we were still debating if we're going to be able to do that. Also felt really liked the gifting opportunity, the gift giving. I don't know what it was called within that.
Yeah, the Girl Scouts. That was an amazing project that they did. Yeah.
Yeah, the be able to, I mean, all the kids I know that were there went in there and had things wrapped up and walked out of there to give the people. They're all still in the back of my truck, but they will make their way into the tree eventually. And they're all wrapped, which is nice. And Gimme Coffee won our Merry Merchant Award because they have a really nice display in their window. We had a ETC meeting last Friday. Really the main update out of there is tentatively hoping to have maybe the first community discussion on what to do with that space in March, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I know we've also continued to work with DPW to get the parking area in shape there and continue to put work in on the pollinator garden. So again, thank you for the DPW crew for how you're assisting the green team with that. Ms. Giles, did I leave anything out that you'd like to report? Okay.
Okay,
Good.
treasurer's office.
Treasurer's office. It's the wrong thing. Where did you place this? Okay. So I submitted the second and final disbursement for the I&I grant reimbursement. That's very exciting. So there should be $11,000 coming back from that project. I begin budget conversations with the police department and the DPW just soon to think about really setting time to talk about your 2024 fiscal year. Things like sewer plans. I did discover a very exciting invoice module within the Williamson Harbor program, so that it will make tracking of contracts, emergency contracts and outside water billing and things like that for special event rather water billing like grassroots, much easier to generate, track, and receive. And let's see, just a heads up that we had already talked that health insurance, medical health insurance would go up. We're gonna see that increase happening in January, and also the dental premiums are going up like $5 to $9 a package. And I don't really have anything else specific for any requests from the treasurer's department. So I don't have any treasurer specific things requiring the clerk.
Okay.
I'll find out about those sewer lines from Dwayne. So let's see, we did after the last report that it was difficult to find the online link for the meeting. We've now surfaced that on the board webpage, the landing page. There is the link, the meeting link right there, just above where Jen had already put a quick link to the recordings so that you can see the meeting, go right there instead of having to scroll all the way down to meeting specific link, which is great. We will do water bills. They will go out January 3rd because the village offices will be closed December 25th, 26th, and closed January 1st and 2nd. We'll make news posts about that. So water bills will go out on the 3rd. I'm pleased to report that I was able to get the online credit card swipe process to work. So you can come into the village office and pay with cash, preferably not all coin, but cash and a check and a credit card. Of course, fees will apply. Those fees are not received by the village, they're received by the third party vendor, but that's nice. And that's that. Do you have anything to add to the treasurer plan?
To the treasurer plan. IT migration. We don't have a scheduled date when that's going to happen. I'll keep you posted. I'll send out emails as I hear more. Kind of right now, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. In addition to that, we the folks from the county clerk's office, Maureen Reynolds and Rachel Graham, and excited that we found out that they will actually do scanning of some of our documents for us and have
The street files and board minutes.
Yeah,
Which is great. The street files are huge.
yeah. So Tom, very happy about that. He has a lot of shelves of files for all the houses in Trumansburg. So we're getting those digitized. Hopefully early next year, we'll need to set up a process for sending those boxes out, getting them scanned. And that's all I have.
Okay. Item number 8 is old business. We have a couple of things related to this proposed application for contractual funds for nonprofits.
Jen was kind enough to put it in the Dropbox. I know we talked about having a cover sheet. So there's a cover sheet for an outline for the contractual funding application guidelines, and then the application for the organization itself, with the modifications on that we talked about at the last meeting. So did you have any concerns, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we may need to take a left-hand turn here. Or right-hand turn, depending which direction we're going. Trustee Darfler was It's a disease, I'm telling you. He was doing what I have been guilty of doing myself at times, and that is randomly perusing NICOM guidance.
Yeah, I did that too.
And I wonder, this is something we haven't really looked at,
In a long,
probably in my time on the board.
yes.
I wonder if we want to, with much trepidation, have this conversation with Guy.
Yes, I think we should. Because I came across, when I was examining, that's what some of this paperwork is, when I was going through some of this. Like specifically when Keith brought up the other day when we were talking about not-for-profits, when I went through some of the opinions of the state comptroller. Like for instance, if it's a not-for-profit Little League, we could not sponsor them. We could not do contractual funding for them because it's a specific group of people. It needs to broadly cover the village and it's all in all of its residents. So I think, I agree with you. I think it needs to be, I think it needs to be run by the village attorney, and I did see some copies of how those contracts should be written out as well and signed by the mayor and the director of the specific organization that makes the applications. And I got to thinking, I don't even know how. I mean, NICOM said it shouldn't be complicated, which is why I think this application is simple enough for somebody to fill out, but the legal ease of it, like you said, Gordon, I think maybe needs to be.
Is it worth talking with NICOM? This feels like something they'd have a stock answer.
Yeah,
And just reach out to them directly, because Guy's answer
The
is gonna
stock
be Guy's
answer,
answer.
the stock answer is what's in the Dropbox.
I'm just losing the Dropbox.
There's it's called Gifts and Loans Revised. It's NICOM's full guidance document.
I mean, they might have. Well, I don't know. If there are places that are doing this that they like, they might have.
Yeah, it feels like there'd be a best practices.
But my sense from reading that document, honestly, is that this whole idea is just exactly a best practice. The reading from that document was more that there are ways in which you as a municipal government can come up with needs that you have, and then you can go find a group to go contract with. But this flipping of it, of kind of asking for funds, didn't, I don't know, I had a hard time figuring out where the two would come together.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. It feels very backwards to me too, but all right, maybe I guess straight to Guy.
I'm just looking for one relevant section here.
Language is terrible. This provision in the state constitution was intended to curb raids on the public purse for the benefit of favored individuals. Don't raid the public purse.
Right. And some of the language is confusing. Well, you really can't do this, but in a roundabout way, you could do it like this.
It's right. It's about how you frame it, but.
So here's the, because of the can of worms we opened last year, here's the relevant line, right? Municipalities may establish and provide for public library systems under municipal control. And may make an annual appropriation to the library board or make a grant to the library. A municipality may not, however, donate funds to private libraries located within its boundaries, such as free association libraries, unless payment is made as part of a contract with the library for fixed library services to be rendered. So we can't give it to the library, according to that language.
So the way the youth commission does it is we donate specifically to the summer reading program, right? Which meets that. I do think, I mean, to me, this is kind of why Meals on Wheels, the Historical Society, and the library are the groups that we've historically selected, because they serve a public good.
But it's the fixed services to be rendered.
Right.
That has never been defined.
Also, for the Historical Society, that's could be easy to write out, right? For the same reason that we have a historian, right? Like they preserve the history of the village.
Well, that's
is a
what
public good.
that's why I would ask Guy, because my reading of fixed services to be rendered is, we're gonna do this for you this year. Yeah. We're gonna publish 900 more copies of Lydia Sears' book.
Right. And that's exactly how it's
See,
written.
my
in the
reading
neg-
would be, we're not gonna burn Lydia Sears' book because we have to demolish our building, right? It's like, I would,
I think a legal interpretation of what fixed services to be rendered means is probably, I think that's pretty necessary there.
And I do think, to your point, though, at least with the library, the Historical Society, and maybe Meals on Wheels, it seems there is possibly a path forward. Like those are, in theory, proper municipal purposes that we have to just figure out what the fixed, purpose is. There were, I think, to your point about like when it got into recreation and youth leagues and stuff, it got way murkier much more quickly. So I think at the very least, it's probably worth going back and looking at what we're currently doing. I think there's maybe a path forward there that seemed more possible. But my read of having a general kind of, hey, tell us what you're into, I think that it gets really squirrely pretty quickly.
I know the Guy and Nate, the town's attorney, spent some time thinking through the functions of the LDC. Right. And how we can appropriate municipal dollars to it, even though we're members, because it's an outside entity. So I think that,
And there was a lot of language about have municipal control, like
Right.
that we had municipal control over the agency that, we just can't give it to like some organization and it goes rogue and then all of a sudden it's not representing our core.
Right. If we wanted to run a baseball program through the youth team and we ran it, but we contracted with some other youth group to like run it, that's one thing. But if we just give money to that youth group, that is no good.
Or if it was under our youth program,
Right.
we could do that.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be, because we haven't done it in a really long time. I think it's worth re-examining the way that we do it and how that we do it and that we do it correctly.
okay. I will,
I hate to say it, but I feel like I want to throw out the idea of like, I'm happy for someone who wants to run with this to go with it. It also may not be worth our time, attention, and focus to get to the bottom of all of this for
For the very little money that
for
we
the few
have to
$1,000
think about.
that we give to places on a regular basis. Not because I don't think that's valuable. I do think it's valuable, but if it's gonna cost that much in guys' time to sort out if we can even do it, it may not be entirely worth it. I don't know. I could be convinced either way.
I don't know that it'll be a lot of words, but I don't know that it'll be a lot of guys' time.
Fair.
I mean, he's probably answered this
Does seem like it might
a
be.
few hundred times before.
Yeah.
And then that way we can have clarification so we can know.
Just that some of the
But I-
wording is so ambiguous. Well, you can't do,
Well,
but
honestly, I think TCR doesn't fit in any of these boxes.
Quite possible. Yeah.
So TCR doesn't fit. There's certainly other local not-for-profits that wouldn't fit. Probably worth. It's probably worth knowing.
an example of an opinion was food pantry wasn't acceptable.
Okay, go. I missed
You know,
that one.
food pantry was
Yeah.
acceptable because it was feeding the community as a whole.
I don't think TACC fits.
What?
It's a civic organization.
Aren't we paying to be members though?
We can pay a membership,
So that,
but that's $85.
good point. I forgot that yep.
So we'd have to.
Table
That's a
this.
good point. I mean, it'll keep coming up in different ways in different places, even if we're not doing this right now. So it's probably good to have clarity from Guy to the extent that we can get it.
I'm curious. So,
Yeah.
all right, I will put that on Guy's plate. Any other items of old business? New business, voluntary termination of water and sewers.
Yes, so let me tease this apart a little bit. In general, as an aside, the DPW is happy to come turn off someone's water at the curb and turn it back on at request. It doesn't take them more than a couple of minutes. Some service that people who are gonna go south for the year or want to do water, are doing some construction inside or whatever can do. That's not what I'm talking about with this particular moment. What I'm talking about is people who would like to stop paying their water bill altogether. Because remember that there's a flat fee for water. If you have an apartment building that has a number of units, all of a sudden you're talking about kind of real money every other month. If you were to say not be using that building. So we've had a couple people, at least one apartment owner who is doing large construction of their apartment who would like to stop paying that bill during the construction. And my mind, I'm open to that idea if someone's actively has a building permit for their building. My thinking is that you don't have to pay for your water until you are done constructing your building. If you're doing large reconstruction of your building where there's no one there, feels kind of similar in thought to me. So I feel like I'm talking about a lot of little individual pieces without giving the broader picture. The broader picture is there's an ask for, do we have a way, or we would like to create a process or procedure for someone to request their water and sewer utilities to be terminated and therefore not have to pay their flat fee. And so I wanted to bring that conversation here. I'm as I was kind of mentioning poorly, I don't know why I'm floundering around in this, but I'm curious about the idea for buildings where there's an active building permit, where someone is just totally tearing it apart. They don't want any water and sewer on. They're pulling it down to the studs or whatever. And I don't see a need for them to have to pay their water and sewer bills during that period. I don't think this works for people who are just kind of snowbirds, because that seems like you just don't have to pay your water half the year, which seems kind of irresponsible and has a impact on the rest of the community. So in talking to Guy about this, his point was basically make sure that we are not unduly burdening the other users of the system for people who are wanting to terminate their service. But if we're interested in the idea of buildings which have a active building permit who are just completely empty and being worked on for some period, I can't imagine there's very many of them, and I'm sympathetic to that plight. We could come up with a policy for allowing them to terminate their water and sewer, pull the water meter, and let them kind of do their thing. And when they're all done, we can put it back in and start charging them again. So that was kind of a lot of words. I'll open it up. I feel like there's a lot of kind of like questioning faces. So happy to take questions, open discussion around that idea.
I guess my only thought is that that flat rate is to help cover the maintenance of the entire system.
Right.
That doesn't go away even if you're not using your water and your sewer. You know, we still have the burden of that cost. So,
right.
I mean, they're not going to be paying a ton if they're not using any of it, right?
Well, so in this case, it was $250 a month. So it's
oh, that's significant.
It was noticeable, right? It's a 4-unit apartment. I can't remember off the top of my head what all flat rates are, but flat rate for water and sewer for each of those 4 units.
Do we have a capability to just charge maybe a small reduction or a fee, a construction fee?
Probably. We don't I don't think it's in the structure now, but we could add something like that. That could be an alternative for this. We could think of something, you know, half of it or quarter of it or whatever we want to come up with. I think that is certainly the conversation, I think, is what do we think is kind of an reasonable,
like $50 a month or something like that.
Yeah, what is a reasonable reduction?
Right. I mean, though I sympathize with the circumstance and I certainly understand that, it just seems to me that we charge that flat rate for a fee for a reason, and it's to cover the expense and the burden of the overall running of the whole thing.
Right. I mean, right now it's 62 and a half, I think, dollars a month per unit. So I think that the reason this is coming up specifically here is it's a 4-unit apartment building so that you get charged one per each unit. So it's not just the $60-ish
So
a
maybe
month.
we just charge them for one then, while they're under construction,
I think it would, in my mind, it'd be easier to come up with
just a flat
rate,
fee.
a rate per unit
Oh, okay.
or something like that. But I think I'm honestly more. Because in that situation, they're still there, they could still use the water. It starts getting weird. I like the idea of actually pulling the
service.
meter altogether to say like, you're only gonna do this if you're in the place of you're doing so much construction that really no one lives there. No one's even like getting a glass of water there. You are done, you're like basically down to the studs or whatever, is that you're really taking it apart inside. And it's a total job site and you're not having any water or sewer service there at all. That to me makes sense. And that's where then I think it would just be probably not charging anything.
It's just less sticky if you just pull the meter and.
You just pull the meter. You could have I mean, we can have, and we should have a fee. I don't think it'll be a lot, but a fee for pulling and then replacing the meter, you know, so you have to pay a little bit there.
Yeah, because any utility company will charge you for coming out and taking it off or putting it back
Right.
on or whatever.
And in the meantime, while you don't have a meter, we don't charge you anything.
So quickly, as an aside, all of this gets really complicated at Compass, but I don't think any of that's relevant here because the meter question is relevant. So in that conversation, I will not participate. So I'm just gonna throw that out there because that's where things really hit the fan. But I would say that there's some level of like, we want to encourage renovation, right? Like we don't want, you know, if someone's like, oh no, you know, I can't do this. I don't know that it's not a huge amount of money if we're talking, you know, thousands and thousands on a complete rehab of a home, but to me, it feels like long-term benefit to the system to have a better, more reliable, more resilient housing stock. Maybe that's.
I like that framing.
So it's an incentivizing sort of thing, yeah.
Pretty marginal one.
I think
still.
Right. To me, it kind of feels like if you're walking a house and it's down to the studs, and you're like, why am I spending $60 a month on water and sewer when I don't even have a toilet in here or a sink anywhere? That to me is, I think, just the juxtaposition that strikes me as like, I get it. That seems understandable why you'd be annoyed at that.
Well, the one thing that stood out to me in Guy's comments was the potential to need water in a construction environment should an emergency develop. And is that a potential risk for neighboring properties if something happens in a construction crew, like there's a fire or something, a construction crew doesn't have access to water?
So it's really down to the studs, they wouldn't anyway, right?
My sewer line went for
Maybe not.
3 years ago and I had to go potty out in my driveway in a porta john for 4 days. I didn't get any reduction and I froze. It was not fun. It was a quick visit. No newspaper reading in the porta potty.
That's why I was kind of liking it to like a new construction, right? If you were building a new house, you also wouldn't have water and sewer there from the jump.
So I think that's the only compelling argument in my mind is a new construction argument where there's no water and sewer. So we would have to come up with some kind of, you know, there'd have to be an active building permit with an estimated time of construction of some amount. Possibly the type of building permit that would require a new certificate of occupancy upon completion. So if you're snowbirding and you're gonna get your bathroom redone, oh, my water turned off. I don't know if that's good enough reason. You're not gonna need a C of O for a bathroom.
Yeah. I like that.
If it's a full gut, then you will.
Right.
So this might be something that ends up involving Tom. So in order for DPW to accept the application to terminate your to temporarily terminate water and sewer service, you would need the code enforcement officer to sign off on the request based on the type of permit he's issuing, something like that. Because a new construction argument is compelling.
Yeah,
And then once you got your certificate of occupancy, then,
right, then it would go back in.
yeah,
But, you know, obviously people do live in houses that are under renovation.
Right,
They just live in the corner of the house.
right.
done that too.
Well, and the flip side is if you're actually living in the house and it's the corner of the house, you still want your water and sewer.
Right, but then that same person decides to vacation for 3 months. And
That's a good scenario because that absolutely will happen, right?
I think that's the balance is if the code enforcement officer says this construction is of a scale that will require a new certificate of occupancy upon completion, similar to new construction, then I think it's fair. I think it's fair to ask. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 unit or 12.
Yeah. I like that. So I will double check with Tom to see his take on what kind of feels right. Probably new certificate of occupancy seems about right. I'll see if he's got any other ideas there. And then is this do we, I never quite know where the line is when we want a resolution to kind of create a new like billing service. All right. So maybe I'll come back around and look to have something in January. And I'm thinking, what is it? Like, I think we should also very explicitly call it like a construction sewer and water termination. Yeah, whatever we want to term it, but something, construction, something,
Yeah,
really frame it just as that specific thing. And have the process be sign off from Dusty and Tom.
yeah, I think that would work the best.
Ben, when you do that, I'm sure you'll think about how many in the average year in Tom's experience, to how many incidences this might apply. As you think about the economic business model, it's probably not many, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
And I'm sorry, did you all end on thinking of reducing it or feeling of any other, that's the conversation?
I don't think we would reduce it. We don't charge a water and sewer fee for new construction
Okay.
until they hook up. But there is a tap fee.
Yeah. Yeah, they're already tapped, so they don't need to pay that
Right, but
again.
we could have a disconnect, reconnect fee.
Then there absolutely should be.
Right.
And I would tie that just to the amount of time for the DPW, which is not massive, but it should be $25 or something like that.
If I see that was water, that's at 100.
That's true. That's a bigger lift, I think. I did ask Dusty, he's like, it takes me, it's the work is primarily in finding the time to get into the building.
Okay.
It is, once you're in there, he says it takes 5 minutes to pull it out. So
How much does the tap fee?
$100 in the village or something like that.
It's temporary, but I don't know if that's for every installation the whole time. I don't know.
No, yeah.
Please call the office. No one's called yet.
What? Yeah. I can't remember. Dusty has it. I want to say it's 100 or maybe a little bit less. But it's there again. It's mostly based on their time to go out and actually tap the main and put the service line in.
I think I would be prepared for that. If we're trying to mirror new construction.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a deterrent for like, if you're gonna leave for a month, not worth doing.
Right.
But if it's gonna be long-term rehab, I don't know, something to think about.
Yeah, we could put it at. I know like in general fees can't be egregious. They have to be kind of directly related to time, but there's no reason for it to be at cost. It could be, their time.
Because I bet that organizing time to get into the basement, like he says it takes 5 minutes, except that, but I
Right.
bet that
That
takes,
can take a while. Yeah.
2
Yeah, I don't
minutes.
mind. I don't mind making that, 50 or even $100 to turn it on and off. And, especially if someone's again going to save a few $100 a month on this. It makes sense.
And I'm sure he'll bring it up to you, Ben, but in preliminary discussions with Tom, he sort of mentioned that. Well, what's the time frame? What's the extension? Like, because you don't want to encourage people to just not complete their work projects. So it's a building permit, but then you can re-up for your building permit. Like, is there a limitation on that?
Yeah, I think I would probably tie it just to that building permit. I think we should have that be the driving factor there.
You can ask to reapply.
And that's fine. I think as long
So
as
then
you have, yeah, I don't think we need a separate schedule for just this part versus the building permit piece.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right, new outside water users.
All right, another exciting conversation. This came up because I have recently learned that we have a 2005 resolution and in fact, a previous resolution from 95 maybe. Both times confirming that we intend not to extend water usage to outside users except if there is a water district. That notwithstanding, we continue to get requests and have often continued to do such a thing, which is to create new outside water users. There is currently an ask from someone on West Seneca and Maine. There's another ask, or will be maybe coming up at the end of Penn, just outside of the village boundaries. So I wanted to bring it back to us as a board to discuss. Do we want to reassert, probably not with yet another resolution, but just amongst ourselves, and so we're all on the same page, that we are continuing to not extend new service to outside new water users? Do we want to change that policy? Or any other sort of option, but I think those are probably the two major ones.
What was the last outside, without naming names, what was the last outside water user added outside of the water district?
When was it added?
It was a year or two back, there was,
Final payment was received in 2022.
and it was out
And it
out
was-
south, down
Yeah.
that way, right? I don't remember exactly where.
So, but that was in for 2022. And if I said the name, you would know, and then that would be appropriate, because I can't remember. But I know that it was put in, and then when I came in the spring of 2022, I received the final payment of that.
I want to say it was like down Waterbury.
Waterford, okay,
I think it was on Waterbury, yeah.
okay. Jen's really good with this.
I think my impression is that I don't think Dusty was aware of this, and I think
that. I was gonna say, I don't know. Certainly not.
That's another probably miss in the policy, is that I think Dusty is not aware of any of these policies, and I'm not sure that the front office at the time was. And so I think what ended up happening is there was just this sense of like, well, if there's a thing that we can, if you want to put a line in, we'll just tap it into whatever we got out there, and away we go. So I think this is kind of getting house in order sort of situation. Slash just reconfirming what we would like to do or not.
I'm honestly not sure I can come up with the rationale for going one way or the other.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
He's gonna help you.
I would appreciate it.
Think about it.
I do know, I mean, the other option beyond extending water is, I think, probably the most likely one is to talk about annexation. If people want water service, they can. I mean, not everyone, I guess, is adjacent to Trumansburg necessarily, but they're probably pretty damn close, and that can kind of start a conversation there, which again, I'm actually not entirely sure which way I lean on that either.
So, in my conversations with Guy, he has essentially said there's no reason we should ever have any outside water users that are not in a town water district, ever. Okay. And the primary reason why is, from his perspective, is different than mine. His perspective basically has to do with, and I'm probably forgetting some parts of it, but it has to do with maintenance and ownership of the lines. Who owns the lines? Who's responsible for the lines? Who's liable for the lines? My perspective is we have no way to recoup unpaid bills. We can't even send them to collections because we don't have a direct contract with an individual. In a water district, the town is billing them. We're billing the town, and the town can re-levy the property taxes for unpaid bills, just like we do within the village.
And we are restricted from turning off service, right? Because it's an essential utility. So we are hamstrung doubly.
Right. Okay.
Though I think we also have turned off service.
There's some mechanisms.
There are ways, but it was difficult.
Turn it on for a day. Yeah, it's all this, but you can turn off service as long as you make it available for health and hygiene, some hours of the day, something like that. On my never ending list is, and I've already started talking to the town about all of our outside users who are currently not in a water district, putting them in a water district. The water users don't get a choice. It's entirely up to the town. You can force your outside users into a town water district if the town is willing. That would then force those users to pay their portion of the capital costs for improvements. And then it would allow the village to not have dozens of bills in arrears for years as we have in the past. So there are, I think, I want to say it's a couple hundred outside water users. So that is a long-term project with respect to the existing ones. They don't get grandfathered into anything. They have to be put into water district. In the town, the current administration in the town is willing to work with us on that. So I don't know that it makes sense to create any more of those folks.
Right, so that to me, right, it mostly the billing, but the ownership piece is important, is like the reason why I'm not interested in kind of creating more. And so then I guess if people would approach us, then the answer can be talk to the town about a water district or talk to us about potential, and your neighbors about potential annexation. Those are the two.
I think it's perfectly fine to say, please talk to your town government about a water district.
Yeah.
I'm a little hesitant to bring annexation only because would we be steering people down a potential legal rabbit hole that we may or may not, we potentially might not want to be.
Right. Right, that's fair. I mean, it is an option. I tend to like to tell people all their options, but it might be a very bad one, and even bringing it up kind of can lead people to think it's better than it actually is.
And I don't know that it's bad to mention. I just think we have to be careful how we present it as a potential option, but we're not recommending or not recommending.
Right, just kind of the like, if and when that were to be coming before this board, we would have to make make our own deliberation and consideration. It's not by any means a foregone conclusion.
Right. I mean, at the north end of the village, annexation is, I think there's only 3 properties there, is compelling. I mean, they really never should have been left out of the 08 annexation. It almost hung up the 08 annexation because they essentially became a landlocked piece of the town.
It's real weird up there.
Which is strange. I mean, they don't come into the town contiguously anywhere else.
I don't think the town is aware that they're part of it. At least not the highway department.
Probably.
The town administration is aware that those.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Yeah, but as far as maintenance and that kind of thing, they sort of exist in this very.
Right.
In fact, all of West Central does.
And they're not often aware that the landowners are definitely not aware, unfortunately, that they're not part of the village until now, when asking for water. And I feel for them, right?
And unfortunately, the annexation petition requires all of the property owners to agree. It's a large enough area where we have residents that need to vote on a referendum. But if it's 3 or 4 properties, they would all need to apply. Certainly clean some things up. Maybe a conversation to kind of float.
That's interesting. So for that particular property, it could be more of a, why don't we talk about that conversation, see where that goes, kind of thing. I think outside in other areas, again, like out Penn or out, south, whatever, I think it's more of a talk to your town sort of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the primary area. If you go down South Street Extension to Waterburg, we have a lot of water lines out there. We have a lot of users out there that are not in the water district that should be.
Yeah.
There's 180 outside.
Yeah.
2 of those are for the golf course, which is maybe just for the book.
GIS map of it somewhere.
It's quite a few.
With pins. So
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
I can find it and share it.
All right, so then my takeaway from this is our position continues to be that we do not extend water outside the village without a water district. But for the kind of odd use case of that corner up on Main Street and Seneca Road, that could be a conversation about cleaning that up, because that's kind of a pain in everyone's rear anyhow.
A broader conversation about that if everyone's willing.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask one question? The district doesn't have to be geographically connected, does it? If you have to, you know, the water district, do they have to be geographically related to the district? So would you end up if you were here and here and here outside?
Those would be separate water districts. Generally, your water district is going to be along a particular line or pathway.
Okay.
Like cars be its own. You can have, you can have single user water districts. Or small number of user water districts.
Well, we do cars, I believe.
It is
The
not a
town.
water district.
So what's the one that I'm thinking of that the town pays and they collect?
Water District 3 comes down 9496, it takes a left on Cold Springs Road, comes all the way from the town of Ithaca.
Okay.
That's Water District 3. Which actually comes all the way from the town of Ithaca at Wolf Lane,
Okay.
all the way down 96, takes a left on Cold Springs and terminates just short of Plum Road. Just past Barrowwood Road. Water District. I don't know why they're odd numbers.
Did that give you enough information to kind of any more conversations? I forgot where some of those threads were left, but I think.
We're talking about responding back to the
Yeah.
citizen.
Yeah.
I was gonna keep the language on. Yeah, it's only there's some of you guys are gonna have a bigger conversation. There's nothing to say to the resident right now. Unless you want to.
Well, that conversation has to include the residents. We can't, a municipality cannot initiate an annexation.
Why don't,
You know, float that idea as a potential
Yeah.
solution.
And I definitely feel like coming from the water commissioner is better than coming from the clerk's office.
yes, I will find that email unless I can't, and then I'll ask for your assistance.
Okay.
And then can respond. All right, I think that's it for that.
Okay. AV upgrade for EMS.
So the fire station meeting room, when we have our meetings there, stuff gets moved. There is some stuff there as far as audio visual equipment, but it's fairly outdated. The computer that used to be in the cabinets is now gone. It was useless. In any case, Joel has looked around, has tried to find options for an upgrade. What he would like to do is to split the cost between EMS, fire, and the village. In light of that being sort of a shared space. So the first question is, are we interested in pursuing an AV upgrade that would benefit, you know, obviously all public meetings, as well as EMS training and fire training? Does that conceptually make sense? The second question is, are we okay with a split where the village as a whole pays for, Joel has proposed the bulk of that, and then fire and EMS split portion?
What's the money cost?
The total cost would be
Was something in the Dropbox too, right?
there is, but Joel wanted to take some of that out. I think, Jen, did you put the quote in Dropbox?
There's one with a total of just shy of 10K in the Dropbox.
But I don't think I didn't get.
Oh, it shouldn't be that. What's it called in the Dropbox? Didn't think it was-
Tilde 9-C or -9.c.est.
Oh, never mind, actually.
So all communications.
Yeah,
It is, that it's stable as it comes from the top and like.
Okay, so it would be that. Oh, God. Sorry. It was in there, that's my mistake. Thank you, Jen. Yeah. I really need to replace my computer, so I can stay not on my phone. There is a item at the bottom, number 7. That Joel would like to remove. But before we even get into the estimate, the real question is, do we as a village want to cover the cost? Are we all right with that idea of a split? His suggested breakdown based on this invoice was 5 for the village and then 2 for the fire and 2 for EMS. How we want to do that, how we think about that is, I think, the more important question, at least to me. I think to me it makes conceptual sense, but again, I don't know where people come down. I don't honestly know. Jess would probably have the best idea how much that space gets used for other events.
Yeah, so I would say it gets used once every 2 months, roughly, if we're gonna average that out. Perhaps there's heavy use that
public
don't use. Yeah, and right now, just to put it in perspective, right now, we move the owl and mics and the AV system down there.
Who's in there once every 2 months?
So I'm just sort of estimating when there's a special meeting or the budget meeting or there is no scheduled thing. It was on the spot having an estimate. But right now, what we're doing is a pretty light lift of moving.
I mean, this board is in there twice a year.
Yeah,
Fire budget, fire and EMS budget, which we often don't have remote capabilities for.
Right.
And
And not a lot of public.
the state of the village, which we certainly do. Yeah, so really once a year, we for sure need quality AV, and then I guess CBA or planning had a huge meeting. But that hasn't happened really since hopefully successfully.
It'll be a while.
but again, arguably, we have the equipment that can be
Right.
moved there, because they have a smart TV.
I think the other way to look at it is, as a village, do we want that to be a secondary situated AV setup for public, more of like almost like as a public good on from our behalf, right? Like that we have a couple of spots in the village that people can hold meetings on that have AV setups. We use it as a board occasionally, other boards occasionally use it. But then it's also an opportunity for the town to occasionally use it as they have, and those sorts of things. It's a different way of framing it. I don't know if I have a strong opinion which way to think about it.
That's
Does seem like it's certainly not much nicer than what we have here.
It is, and that's really driven by the training, right? So like, the owl doesn't really work for, for the public input. So imagine that those are detailed medical questions, right? Clearly, so I think that's kind of the idea.
Say more about the training now. I thought this was just, I was envisioning it, maybe it still is just like internal to the EMS or the company, but is this like public
largely
training
it
too?
is, but Joel is also aiming to increase the training offerings. So it would be, CPR more broadly, more trainings with more broad public.
And they could join remotely is the idea.
Well, so you can have trainers or people train remotely. There's obviously hands-on stuff you can't do.
So it'd be people going, I'm just gonna ask a bunch of questions. That would be
Yeah.
people going there and the trainer would be remotely brought in, or is that what you're
So I
saying?
think it depends on the trainer, right? But like, yeah, in some cases you would have an expert, cardiac surgeon or someone, right, who could come and explain things to you. Or on the flip side of that, if you wanted to do, half of a CPR training that doesn't have to be hands-on, you could attend remotely.
Right.
Things like that. So honestly, without talking to Joel, I don't know the real specifics, but I can
That's
kind of
fair.
imagine scenarios where it works both ways.
Right. I mean, I think my sense is I'm kind of interested in helping out from the idea of like just having another space that has AV, but maybe only up to kind of the amount of money that we've roughly spent here. I don't know, like I'd have to figure
I
out
don't
like a
think we
rough.
should pay such a big portion of it.
I think that's kind of the idea is like
Yeah.
maybe it's split thirds around or you know, I could figure out kind of back of the napkin math of what we have here, but I don't think. Well, I mean, the owl is probably the same cost as almost everything else in this room. So like maybe we're at 2,000 here.
I mean, I think that's fine. Like, to be clear, we are all three parties in this trade. So
Right.
like, I don't think it really makes a huge difference as far as where it comes from. It's all the village.
Yeah, I mean, if Joel was, I'll just speak for myself. If Joel was looking at 7,500 total and wanted to go to 25 each, that seems more reasonable than like the 5K, 2K split. But I'm curious to hear what other people think.
I think that's where I was leaning. I think that having a space where you can just kind of show up and go is important. I mean, we almost had a situation where, you know, we wanted to use this equipment for Winterfest and fire had a meeting or EMS had a meeting the night before. So if there's ever were a conflict there, something like that, would be nice to have a backup space or a backup AV outfit. I don't think, you know, we don't really have a, you know, real community meeting space in town. Maybe the library has some space, but in terms of where you could broadcast something, there's not a lot of space. So I don't know if there's one I would say yes, I would be more apt to go thirds than us take on half, because I don't think we use it a lot. But do we allow that space to be booked by outside village entities? We do.
Historically, we have. I've booked it for Compass events.
So if they
And it
really,
used to be like Tai Chi would come in.
so Tai Chi is in there, so it's a community, it's to benefit the community or a firefighter sponsored event. Like a person, like someone in the fire company, if they have retirement, they can use the hall. That's correct.
I've been to
Or like
a birthday
this
party
room
there
too.
that was sponsored by.
Sponsored by a fire member, it can't
Right.
just be my birthday party.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it is a better space, it becomes a better space technologically and could be marketed as so, would it be a chance to recoup some of that cost?
So these are all free things, I just mentioned, we do not collect any fee for the use of the hall currently. By any parties.
Which is the problem, not the fee part,
Collecting is a problem. Oh,
the use. The use of the space by non-village organizations is a problem. Think flag policy.
Oh, yeah, if it was turned down. Yeah.
Said certain groups weren't able to go in there. Right.
Oh, yeah. That'll be a big problem.
just probably toss in for your consideration that not like keeping this equipment stationary probably prolongs its life.
Also a question of is giving people free space is a donation, which we just had a whole conversation.
Exactly.
You're just born for rabbit holes.
I should have been a lawyer in another life. But here we are.
It's not too late, Ben.
No, I'm very happy with what I do and it requires no more education on my part.
Also, why would this be a 22-23 or budget? Why would this be this fiscal year? Why would this be something to budget for next year?
As far as why
Or
is
as
the
an
timing
expenditure.
important?
Yeah, it's an expenditure.
I mean, I don't know that the timing is important, other than it would be nice to use it sooner.
Okay.
There's no, you know, there's certainly nothing dire here.
So I see the gadgets. Who are we paying $1,200 of installation to?
So the idea there is, and again, this is just talking to Joel, and I should also say, I wouldn't want to actually approve this tonight, because I don't believe you talked to the fire department. And we want to make sure that happens.
We should get some more quotes too. I think we've talked to Zufall Communications on other fronts and I don't recall they were always the cheapest, but I can't remember now.
So I can check in with Joel. I believe he has looked elsewhere, and this was what was recommended to him by our IT team. I don't know if you guys can probably answer who that is better than I could.
Oh, really?
And as far as the cost, the reason that it's being installed was that evidently the cost for having it installed was the same as the other company's cost for just getting it outright and installing it ourselves. So that was the thing there. But again, we can go back and ask him more and have him, revise, renew the quote.
Guess I'd like
sort of
to,
go any direction.
I mean, I love the idea of being able to expand training. The second AV site is great, but I guess I'd like to have a better sense from Joel. What's his actual plan of usage? What's the presentation that makes us want to spend the money in that space?
Yeah.
And then of course getting fire on it. If they're like, oh, we're not getting, we don't want to spend it out of our budget, we want to use it, then. And then that's another issue.
Yeah, I think that's fine, though. I mean, those are both Marshall and fire piece to use.
Okay.
As far as the use case for Joel, I think that's the easiest part of it. I mean, they're in their training right now, so I can just ask them what you do Monday.
Yeah, so he's in their training right now. How would this make it better? And if the answer is it wouldn't, but it would be nice to have.
No, it would. I stopped
Wouldn't,
so they're struggling.
would it though tonight?
Yes. I stopped by because his phone wasn't working, so I personally saw the struggle. That was me. Trying to set it up for a loophole. It's a whole thing, but he can share it better than I can.
So this
That's
is
no
more for
problem.
like PowerPoint presentations or slides or something that they would use for.
I mean, I'll let Joel speak for himself
Okay.
on like the specific use cases. In general, it's conveying information effectively both ways. That's what it is as far as what he's actually training with, or like what the pictures look like. I don't know that level of detail.
And I sat there was a lot of single shooter, training for the fire department where other firefighters from different municipalities came, like last year. It was pretty rough. It was pretty difficult to see the information and hear it.
Right, and I think particularly with fire, they would get share trainings. That would, I assume, be more of use to them. For us, for EMS, it's more of a community engagement as they expand their training. But again, happy to let Joel speak more to the specific uses. Well, in that case, that's it. And I do have an executive session.
Any other items of new business?
I'm newly getting tweaky about all the budget lines as we pass over 6 months into the fiscal year. Okay, thank you.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a
Personnel matter.
personnel matter.
So
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.